My parents came home from Kansas City, and my mother had my youngest brother that December. So we continued growing up a little bit more, along with the rose bushes that had started in the bathtub, the lambs that had been a midwinter surprise in the barn, and the various ducks, bad-tempered geese, cute, smelly calves,
any other kind?
and not so cute, smelly, snapping turtles. We went out to visit Papa almost every summer. We had one of those great big vans that can't actually fit a family of 9 in all their luggage. Not just clothes, but stuffed animals, pillows, baby blankets, books, Ad-libs, Twizzlers, Chinese jump ropes, playing cards, a plastic army man, and a random jack. But we hadn't heard of air conditioning yet. 3-day trips across the states in full-blown summer heat wasn't the most pleasant experience in the world. But once we got to that amazing house, we had cousins to play with and old toys to explore, and a bed to sleep in that still had on my mother's childhood bedspread. Not only that, but Papa was so talented that he had magic that kept his house cool and comfortable no matter how hot it was outside. And he had bunnies in the yard that liked to hide in the garden. I think he missed Nina, though. I mean, I'm pretty sure he was glad to see us, but he probably thought a lot about his little tap dancing, singing wife he had married way back when, about having all those kids in a happening house. And now things only happen when his grandkids and his fully grown children came to see him once in a while. I think he started getting lonely in that great big house. My family kept moving. I guess I skipped the part where we started in Texas, but I don't remember that much. I could barely talk when we went out to the farm in Virginia. Then we went to Massachusetts. But that was still in driving distance of Kansas City, so we were all right for a few years. Eventually, though, we got to the point where we couldn't drive out every summer. Some of us kids were growing up so much that we had to do boring adult stuff, like work, instead of hanging out with Papa, who said great things like, "The thing I love most about being the age I am is that I can get a large chocolate milk and nobody can say no." Well, he understood just how wonderful a large chocolate milk was and wasn't about to tell his grandchildren that he was the only one that got to have one. Mama started going out with just a few of us at a time, or maybe even just one. That was pretty special. She'd go a few times every year, not in the car anymore. That's right, we got to go on the planes, just like she did for free when she was a little girl. She used to tell us stories about traveling to Europe and Africa with her family. One I remember best is the time she got some soup that ended up coming with a beetle on top the size of her palm. I don't know how other people reacted to that story, but I pretty much lost any interest I might have had in making it over to Africa. When I got to go to Kansas City with just Mama, she'd take me to special places, like the fancy shopping district called the Plaza. I can remember walking into one real ritzy store that had this huge cosmetic section, and I recognized a wonderful scent as I walked by. I couldn't believe that I'd finally smelled that again. It had at this point long since worn off those gloves, and I didn't think I'd ever get to experience it again. By this time, 822 had been sold, and most of its fantastic ornaments and furnishings, rich with memories of Nina, were either divided among Papa's 5 children or sold along with the house. He had a few of his favorite things moved into a little apartment, but it didn't make it any easier to let that house go. I still miss it, and I make a point to drive past it every time I go back. I'm sure Mama misses it more, since it was her home for almost 50 years. But like I said, we're always sure to see it, and we have a few things from it in our house, too. We visit Papa now in his apartment, and try to bring him back from that in-between world that he seems to favor lately. The last time I saw him was a few months back, and he was just amazing. Understandably, he slept an awful lot, but when he was awake, he was pretty well awake. The newest addition to my immediate family, and I think safe to say the last, was there along with my mother and I. Little
Me.
Me.
That's right.
Little Sally Lou just loved him, as any little 4-year-old girl with a grain of childlike sense would. He took right to her as well, and kept asking questions about her if she left the room for a second, or even left his line of vision, wanting to make sure she was all right and not getting into trouble. He had some cookies in his drawers, something I've never known him to be without, and was pretty determined on her accepting a few of them. He is nearing the end of his life now, a life in which he has helped more people than any of us here can count. I wonder if it's just because he's Bill Fisher, or if it is true of all who are close to their end, that children have the greatest capacity to call them back into contact with this world. It Is it because they are returning to that state of childlike innocence and so most closely identify with the very young? Or is it because physically, Sally Lou is so very different from the people that Papa usually sees? I like to think that it is a combination of both. I miss him so much, and just pray that as he nears his 88th birthday, the Scales will keep in mind everything that Bill Fisher has done for his family. He comes from that time called the Greatest Generation, and I honestly don't know a man who defines it better.
Oh, bravo.